In Las Vegas, under the blazing lights of the MGM Grand, a cocky young champion was about to turn a night of celebration into open confrontation. What began as a routine title defense turned deadly for reputations when the living legends of martial arts decided to answer his taunt in person. Blaze Carter wasn't your typical champion. For 10 unbroken years, he was the face of modern combat, a storm of youth and ego who ended fights before his heartbeat slowed. A man praised for power, but untouched by wisdom. When Seagal and Chuck Norris stepped forward from the crowd to meet his mockery, they carried with them centuries of discipline, patience, and unseen power. Carter's taunt became the spark that lit an ancient fire, a test not of fists, but of spirit, one that would strip away everything he thought he was. What began as a champion's challenge would become a disciple's awakening. And after that night in Las Vegas, the echoes of silence would speak louder than any punch ever thrown. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Las Vegas arena pulsed with raw energy, every seat filled, every voice blending into a deafening roar that echoed off the walls. Floodlights beamed down onto the polished octagon at center stage. Cameras flashed like lightning as fans shouted from every corner. Some waved banners, others leaned forward on the edge of their seats, eyes locked on the fighters. The night's energy felt alive, almost electric, charged with the promise of something big. In the center of this chaos stood Blaze Carter, the Inferno, the undisputed MMA world champion. 28 years old, undefeated. His muscled torso gleamed under the lights as he paced the octagon like a caged predator. Across from him, veteran fighter Mike Toronto, the Iron Wall, breathed steadily, eyes never leaving his opponent. At 41, Toronto represented old-school discipline against Carter's new-wave aggression. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dana DJ Cruz's voice boomed through the speakers. "We are live from the MGM Grand for what promises to be the most explosive title defense in MMA history." The crowd's roar intensified. Carter rolled his shoulders, bouncing on his toes, feeding off the energy. His trademark smirk played across his face as he winked at the cameras. In the blue corner, with a professional record of 23 wins and 7 losses, the challenger, Mike, the Iron Wall Toronto. Modest applause followed, respectful but restrained. Toronto acknowledged it with a simple nod. And in the red corner, undefeated with 26 wins, 22 by knockout, your reigning, defending world champion, Blaze, the Inferno Carter. The arena erupted. Carter raised both arms, turning slowly to acknowledge his kingdom. His eyes gleamed with the reflection of 1,000 camera flashes. In the press section, Maya Lin watched intently. At 34, she'd covered MMA for 8 years, following its evolution from niche sport to global phenomenon. Something about tonight felt different. Her fingers hovered over her laptop keys, ready to capture history. "Fighters to the center!" The referee called both men forward. Carter strutted, chin high, while Toronto moved with measured steps. "I want a clean fight. Obey my commands at all times. Protect yourselves at all times." The referee's instructions barely registered over the crowd's persistent chant, "Blaze! Blaze! Blaze!" The bell rang, slicing through the crowd's roar. Without hesitation, Carter exploded forward. Fast, aggressive, relentless. His fists came like pistons, every jab crisp and calculated. Not wild or reckless, but precise. Toronto moved to counter, disciplined, stalwart, circling carefully, measuring distance. He had faced brash young fighters before, but tonight felt different. Carter didn't just want to win, he wanted to humiliate. Carter pressing forward with that signature aggression. DJ Cruz narrated, voice rising with the action. Toronto trying to establish his jab, but Carter is swarming him. Midway through the first round, Carter began smiling between strikes. "You done already, old man?" he sneered under his breath. Toronto fired back with a sharp counter, almost catching him, but Carter ducked effortlessly, smirk widening. "This ain't a movie, you're in my world." A brutal combination. A right hook slicing across Toronto's jaw sent him stumbling. Another fast punch followed, and Toronto's legs buckled. The referee stepped in, waving his arms, "Fight over." 2 minutes and 17 seconds into the first round. Carter was already turning away, arms raised, crowd on its feet. Medics rushed in immediately. Toronto lay still, eyes blinking slowly, disoriented under the bright lights as officials called for space. "Another first-round knockout!" DJ Cruz shouted into his microphone, barely audible over the arena's frenzy. "The champion retains in devastating fashion." But inside the cage, Carter didn't pause to check on his fallen opponent. He strutted across head, held high, flexing for the cameras. He leapt onto the side of the cage, pumping his fists, grinning wide as he looked out over the screaming fans. "Who's next?" he shouted, voice booming. Backstage, watching on a monitor, Steven Seagal stood motionless. At 72, the martial arts legend and former action star observed with unreadable eyes. Next to him, 64-year-old Chuck Norris sipped water silently, arms crossed over his chest. Neither spoke. They were here as special guests for tomorrow's martial arts exhibition, a celebration of traditional disciplines alongside modern combat sports. Back in the octagon, Carter jumped down from the cage wall and grabbed the microphone from the announcer. Still breathing heavily, he paced slowly, deliberately. "You see that?" His voice rang clear amid the crowd's energy. "That is what real fighting looks like." Maya Lin's fingers paused over her keyboard. Something in Carter's tone made her uneasy. "Not like those fake martial arts movies," Carter continued, grin widening. "Not like those has been signing autographs in the lobby tomorrow." The crowd's response shifted. Some laughed nervously. Others exchanged glances. "I heard Steven Seagal's in town." Carter's voice dropped to a mocking tone. "The great Aikido master, the man who never lost a fight on camera." A murmur rippled through the audience. Carter was stepping into dangerous territory. "Hey, Seagal!" he shouted, pointing at the nearest camera. "Why don't you bring your slow-motion moves into my octagon? Let's see if they work when someone's really trying to hurt you." The crowd gasped collectively. Some fans cheered wildly at the audacity, while others sat uncomfortably silent. DJ Cruz tried to redirect. The champion, fired up after another dominant, but Carter wasn't finished. "All these old guys, Seagal, Norris, they hide behind choreography and camera tricks. I'm offering $1 million of my own money to any one of them brave enough to step in here with me. No rules. No referee. Just reality." Maya Lin's fingers flew across her keyboard now. This wasn't just trash talk. This was a direct challenge to martial arts legends. Her headline formed instantly. "MMA champion offers $1 million challenge to martial arts icons." "Come on, Seagal," Carter continued, voice dripping with derision. "Show us if that Aikido works against someone who hits back for real." In the backstage area, Seagal hadn't moved. His expression remained calm, eyes fixed on the screen. Beside him, Norris sipped his water, then set the cup down carefully. "Someone should teach him about respect," Norris said quietly. Seagal's response was barely audible. "Someone will." Carter finished his tirade to mixed reactions, cheers from his devoted fans, uncomfortable silence from others. As he exited the cage, social media was already exploding. Video clips of his challenge spread like wildfire across platforms. Hashtags formed instantly. Number Carter 5 Seagal. Number Real Fight Challenge. Number Martial Arts War. In her press seat, Maya Lin finished her immediate report and hit send. Her phone buzzed seconds later, her editor wanting her to pursue an exclusive interview with either Carter or Seagal. Preferably both. The arena began to empty. Fans spilling out into the Las Vegas night, debating what they'd witnessed. Some defended Carter's showmanship. Others called it disrespectful to legends who had paved the way for modern MMA. In the locker room, surrounded by his team, Carter laughed as he checked his phone. "We're trending worldwide," he announced, scrolling through notifications. "Bet those old men are shaking in their boots." His manager looked concerned. "Maybe you went too far, Blaze. Seagal and Norris have serious followings." Carter scoffed. "Good. More viewers for when I embarrass them." He tossed his phone aside and began unwrapping his hands. "Set it up. Open challenge at tomorrow's exhibition. Let's see if they have the guts to face reality." Outside the arena, beneath the neon glow of the Las Vegas Strip, a black SUV waited. Inside, Seagal sat motionless, eyes closed in meditation. Across from him, Norris typed a brief message on his phone before setting it down. "He's young," Norris said, breaking the silence. "Doesn't understand what he's asking for." Seagal opened his eyes slowly. Then perhaps it's time he learned. The SUV pulled away from the arena, disappearing into the stream of lights that made the Las Vegas night as bright as day. Behind them, on the massive electronic billboard outside the arena, Carter's challenge played on repeat, his cocky grin 40 feet tall as he mocked martial arts legends. The exhibition was scheduled for 7 p.m. tomorrow. Neither Seagal nor Norris had confirmed their attendance. Maya Lin's article went live at midnight. By morning, it had been shared 2 million times. The storm was building. Dawn broke over Las Vegas, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and gold. The city that never sleeps merely shifted gears, transitioning from night revelry to morning commerce. Outside the MGM, grand crews were already setting up for the evening's martial arts exhibition. Banners featuring legends from various disciplines hung alongside modern MMA stars, two worlds meant to celebrate their shared heritage, now potentially on a collision course. Maya Lin arrived early, press credentials hanging around her neck. Her article had generated unprecedented traffic overnight, and her editor had made it clear, stay with this story, wherever it leads. She sipped coffee as she watched staff transform the arena floor, replacing the octagon with traditional mats for demonstrations. Quite the storm your champion stirred up. Maya turned to find DJ Cruz beside her, looking significantly more subdued than during last night's broadcast. "Not my champion," she corrected. "Just reporting the story." Cruz nodded, scanning the preparations below. "Been in this business 15 years. Never seen anyone directly challenge Seagal and Norris like that." He lowered his voice. "Word is, they're both coming tonight." Maya's journalistic instincts sharpened. "Confirmed?" "Nothing official. But security protocols changed this morning. VIP entrance procedures updated." Cruz raised an eyebrow. "Draw your own conclusions." Across town at the Bellagio, Blaze Carter lounged by the private pool, surrounded by his entourage. Shirtless, sunglasses on, he scrolled through his phone with a satisfied smile. Every sports and entertainment outlet had picked up his challenge. His social media followers had increased by millions overnight. "This is marketing gold," his agent declared, reviewing analytics on a tablet. "Pay-per-view inquiries are through the roof if you face either legend." Carter laughed. "When? Not if." He set his phone down, stretching lazily. "Those dinosaurs won't back down too much pride. But they'll regret it. Their techniques belong in museums, not against real fighters." One of his trainers looked uneasy. "Seagal's Aikido isn't just for show, Blaze. There's legitimate—" "Save it," Carter cut him off. "I've studied their films. Slow, telegraphed movements that only work when your opponent plays along." He stood, towering over the seated trainer. "I don't play along." Back at the arena, preparations continued as the day advanced. By mid-afternoon, fans began gathering outside, many holding signs referencing last night's challenge. Security had been doubled, creating a perimeter around the VIP entrance at the back of the venue. At 5:30 p.m., a simple black sedan pulled up to that entrance. The gathered crowd fell silent as the back door opened. Steven Seagal emerged, dressed in traditional black, hair pulled back, expression neutral. He made no acknowledgement of the cameras or the murmuring crowd. He simply walked forward, moving with surprising fluidity for his age. Maya Lin, positioned near the entrance, noted every detail. Seagal's calm demeanor, his economy of movement, the absence of entourage or security. He carried nothing, needed nothing. This wasn't a man arriving for a confrontation. This was someone simply keeping an appointment. "Mr. Seagal," she called out. "Any response to Blaze Carter's challenge?" Seagal paused. He turned slowly toward Maya, studying her with steady eyes. Then, without a word, he continued inside. Social media exploded instantly. "Seagal arrives" became the top trending topic worldwide. Video of his silent entrance replayed on news stations and sports networks. The exhibition hadn't even begun, yet the storyline had already captured global attention. 30 minutes later, another vehicle arrived, a modest SUV with tinted windows. Chuck Norris stepped out, dressed in simple black pants and a button-down shirt. Unlike Seagal, he acknowledged the crowd with a small wave, but declined to answer any questions. He moved with the relaxed confidence of a man who had nothing to prove to anyone. Inside the arena, Carter's team monitored these arrivals from their private green room. The champion himself appeared unimpressed, but his manager noticed the subtle tightening of Carter's jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. "Just old men coming for autograph sessions," Carter dismissed, but his voice lacked its usual bombastic certainty. At 6:45 p.m., the exhibition hall opened to ticket holders. The arena filled rapidly, a capacity crowd drawn not just by the scheduled demonstrations, but by the possibility of confrontation. Security personnel stood at strategic positions, clearly briefed about potential escalation. Maya Lin found her assigned seat in the press section, directly adjacent to the performance area. From this vantage point, she could observe both the formal proceedings and the VIP section where Seagal and Norris were now seated, separated by 3 chairs. Not acknowledging each other, yet somehow presenting a united front through their shared stillness. At precisely 7 p.m., the lights dimmed. DJ Cruz's voice filled the arena, noticeably more measured than his usual high-energy delivery. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the annual International Martial Arts Exhibition, celebrating the ancient traditions and modern evolutions of combat disciplines from around the world." The crowd applauded, but an undercurrent of anticipation vibrated through the space. Everyone knew this was no longer just an exhibition. The program began with young practitioners demonstrating traditional forms, karate, kung fu, taekwondo, judo. Their movements were precise, disciplined, respectful. With each bow that began and ended their performances, Maya noticed Seagal and Norris giving small nods of acknowledgement. Halfway through the scheduled program, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. The crowd turned as one, and the performers paused mid-demonstration. Blaze Carter had arrived. He strode down the center aisle like he owned it, dressed not in exhibition attire but in his fighting shorts and open robe. Championship belt slung over his shoulder. Behind him walked his entourage trainers, managers, hangers-on. He moved directly to the edge of the performance mat, but didn't step onto it. Instead, he stood with arms crossed, eyes locked on the VIP section where Seagal sat motionless. DJ Cruz attempted to maintain order. "Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome world champion Blaze Carter, who will be performing a demonstration later in our program." Carter grabbed a microphone from a nearby technician. "Why wait?" His voice boomed through the arena. "I see we have some special guests tonight." The crowd's reaction was mixed cheers from his fans, uncomfortable murmurs from traditionalists. Security personnel moved closer to the performance area, but didn't intervene. Carter pointed directly at Seagal. "The great Steven Seagal graces us with his presence." His tone dripped with sarcasm. "I extended an invitation last night. $1 million to step into reality with me." Maya watched Seagal carefully. Not a muscle moved in his face. His breathing remained steady. His gaze fixed forward, neither acknowledging nor avoiding Carter's challenge. "What's wrong, Sensei?" Carter continued, stepping onto the edge of the mat now. "Afraid your slow-motion Aikido won't work when the other guy isn't following the script?" The crowd gasped. Even Carter's most devoted fans seemed shocked by the direct disrespect. Maya glanced toward Norris, whose expression had hardened slightly, the only visible reaction from either legend. Carter began pacing the mat's edge, playing to the crowd. "Let me explain something to everyone here. There's martial arts." He gestured dismissively toward the young performers who had been interrupted. "And then there's fighting." He thumped his chest. "I'm a fighter. These old men are performers." Security moved closer, but the exhibition organizer, a respected judo master named Hiroshi Tanaka, raised his hand, stopping them. This moment had been building. Interference would only delay the inevitable. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. "So what's it going to be, Seagal?" Carter demanded, stepping fully onto the mat now. "Show us your real skills? Or admit what everyone already knows, that it's all camera tricks and cooperative opponents?" The arena fell silent. Every eye turned to Steven Seagal, who hadn't moved or spoken since Carter's arrival. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Seagal simply sat, eyes forward, breathing steady. Then, Chuck Norris stood. The movement was so understated that it took the crowd a moment to register it. No dramatic gesture, no confrontational stance. He simply rose to his feet, removed his jacket, and laid it carefully over his chair. "Oh!" Carter's face lit up with mock surprise. "Chuck Norris wants to step in." "Even better." Norris said nothing. He walked calmly to the edge of the mat, his posture relaxed but alert. At 64, his physique remained impressive, not the exaggerated musculature of youth, but the defined conditioning of lifelong discipline. Carter's smirk faltered slightly as Norris stepped onto the mat. Something in the older man's calm demeanor made the champion hesitate just for a moment before he recovered his bravado. "Two legends, for the price of one," Carter announced to the crowd. "Today's history, folks, the day reality meets myth." Norris stopped 10 feet from Carter. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, yet carried throughout the silent arena. Young man, you've challenged masters who walked this path before you were born. You've mocked traditions that have survived centuries because their core truths remain unchanged. He paused. That shows profound ignorance. Carter's face flushed. Ignorance? I'm the world champion. A champion. Norris corrected gently. Not the world. There's a difference. Maya Lin's fingers flew across her keyboard, capturing every word of this unexpected confrontation. The story had shifted. This wasn't just about a challenge anymore. It was about a collision of philosophies. Carter's patience evaporated. Enough talk. You stepped up, old man. Let's see what you've got. He lunged forward suddenly. A blindingly fast jab, aimed directly at Norris's face. What happened next occurred so quickly that many in the crowd missed it. Norris didn't block the punch. He simply wasn't there when it arrived. A minimal shift of his upper body, a subtle weight transfer, and Carter's fist passed through empty air. The champion's momentum carried him forward, off balance, as Norris pivoted slightly to the side. Fighting begins in stillness, Norris said quietly, now standing behind Carter. Something you haven't learned yet. Carter spun around, face contorted with anger. Stop talking and fight me! He attacked again, a combination this time. 3 rapid punches, followed by a high kick. Norris moved like water around stone, each strike missing by millimeters. His own movements so efficient they seemed almost casual. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This wasn't the dramatic exchange they had expected. It was something more profound. A masterclass in economy of motion. In the core principle that true martial arts isn't about who strikes hardest, but who controls the space between strikes. After 30 seconds of Carter's increasingly frustrated attacks, Norris finally made contact, a simple open palm that redirected the champion's roundhouse kick, sending him stumbling sideways. No counterattack, no exploitation of the opening. Just redirection. This is why you challenged Seagal? Norris asked, voice still calm. To prove what? That aggression beats wisdom? That volume overcomes precision? Carter regained his footing, breathing heavily now, not from exertion, but from mounting frustration. Stop dancing and fight me! Norris remained perfectly centered. I am fighting you. You just don't recognize it because it doesn't match your definition. Something in those words pierced Carter's armor. With a roar of pure fury, he charged forward, all technique abandoned, raw aggression taking over. Norris sidestepped at the last possible moment, and as Carter passed, he placed one hand on the younger man's shoulder and simply guided him, adding the slightest pressure at precisely the right moment. The result was spectacular. Carter's own momentum, redirected by Norris's minimal touch, sent him tumbling across the mat in an ungraceful roll. He came up on one knee, disoriented and humiliated. The crowd gasped collectively. Maya Lin stopped typing, her fingers frozen above her keyboard. DJ Cruz, for once, had no commentary. That, said Norris quietly, was Aikido. The same art you mocked Seagal for teaching. In the VIP section, Steven Seagal remained seated, expression unchanged. But those watching closely might have noticed the slightest nod of acknowledgement. Carter pushed himself to his feet, rage and embarrassment warring across his face. Lucky move, try it again. But something had changed in the energy of the room. The champion's invincibility had been pierced not by a spectacular counterattack, but by the simplest application of fundamental principles. And everyone from the most dedicated fight fan to the martial arts purists recognized it. As Carter squared up again, breathing heavily, his eyes flicked toward the VIP section. For the first time that evening, he made direct eye contact with Steven Seagal. What he saw in those calm, ancient eyes made him hesitate. And in that moment of hesitation, everything changed. The arena held its breath. Carter stood in the center of the mat, his earlier bravado cracked by Chuck Norris's effortless redirection. The champion rolled his shoulders, trying to reclaim his composure, but something had shifted, not just in the room, but within him. For perhaps the first time in his professional career, doubt had crept in. Maya Lin captured the moment in terse notes. Champion shaken. Not physically, spiritually. Norris exposed the hollow center of Carter's aggression with minimal effort. The crowd senses it. The narrative has changed. DJ Cruz's commentary had grown quieter, almost reverential. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing something extraordinary. Chuck Norris, at 64 years old, demonstrating the core principles that have made him a legend. Carter's team stood frozen at the mat's edge, unsure whether to intervene. Their fighter had initiated this confrontation. Protocol dictated they let it play out. But the manager's expression betrayed concern. This wasn't following the script they'd imagined. Norris stood relaxed, hands lowered, posture open. Nothing in his stance suggested aggression or even defense. He simply existed in the space, perfectly centered. Again, Carter demanded, voice tight with restraint. Come at me for real this time. Norris shook his head slightly. I haven't attacked you once. I won't start now. Then what is this? Carter gestured angrily at the space between them. Some kind of demonstration? I'm not your student. But you are, Norris replied softly. Everyone here is. That's the purpose of this exhibition, to learn, to respect, to grow. Something in those words ignited fresh rage in Carter. He launched forward again, this time with a measured combination jab, cross, leg kick techniques that had devastated opponents in the octagon. Norris moved minimally, each strike missing its target by fractions of an inch. No wasted motion, no dramatic evasion. When the leg kick came, he simply raised his own leg slightly, allowing Carter's shin to pass beneath. Then returned his foot to the exact same spot on the mat. The display was mesmerizing. Not because it was flashy, it was the opposite of flashy, but because it demonstrated a level of control that transcended normal human movement. Carter reset, frustration mounting. Is this what martial arts is? Dancing away from attacks? Martial arts, Norris responded, is understanding energy. Yours is scattered, explosive, wasteful. Notice how hard you're breathing while I haven't broken a sweat. The champion glanced at the crowd, seeking the validation he was accustomed to, but found only stunned silence. Even his dedicated fans watched with uncertain expressions. This wasn't the domination they had come to expect. In the VIP section, Steven Seagal remained motionless, his focus unwavering. But Maya noticed something subtle. The martial arts legend had shifted his posture slightly, leaning forward almost imperceptibly. He was no longer just observing. He was studying. Carter, desperate to regain control of the narrative, turned to the audience. This is exactly what I meant. Movie martial arts, all flash, no substance. He's not fighting. He's avoiding fighting. The words rang hollow in the arena. Everyone present had witnessed the stark contrast in energy expenditure. Carter increasingly disheveled and frustrated, Norris calm and composed. Young man, Norris said, fighting isn't just striking. It's control of yourself first, your opponent second. Carter's patience evaporated. Enough philosophy. He turned toward the VIP section, pointing directly at Seagal. You. This challenge was for you. Are you going to hide behind Norris? Or do you have the guts to face me? The crowd's collective intake of breath was audible. The direct challenge, issued with such disrespect, crossed a line that even Carter's most ardent supporters recognized as inappropriate. For several long seconds, Seagal didn't move. His expression remained unreadable, eyes fixed on some middle distance, as if Carter's challenge existed in a different reality than his own. Then, with deliberate slowness, he rose to his feet. The movement itself was unremarkable, a man standing up, yet it carried a weight that silenced the entire arena. Seagal straightened his black jacket and began walking toward the mat with unhurried steps. As he approached, Norris turned to face him. The two legends regarded each other silently, a wordless exchange between masters that spoke volumes to those who understood martial arts not as competition but as lifelong pursuit. Norris nodded once, then stepped back, ceding the space to Seagal. Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard. Changing of the guard. One legend to another. Silent communication that speaks louder than Carter's challenges. The crowd understands something profound is unfolding. Seagal stepped onto the mat, his movements fluid despite his 72 years. He walked to its center, stopping several feet from Carter. His hands remained relaxed at his sides, his posture neither aggressive nor defensive, simply present. Carter, momentarily thrown by this development, quickly recovered his bravado. Finally, the real target of my challenge. He addressed the crowd. Steven Seagal, the Aikido master himself. Let's see if those wrist locks work on someone who isn't being paid to fall down. Seagal remained silent, his breathing steady, his focus absolute. Nothing in his demeanor acknowledged Carter's taunts. Nothing to say? Carter circled slowly. No wisdom to share before I humiliate you? Still nothing from Seagal. Just calm, centered presence. Carter stopped circling. Your silence won't save you, old man. Without warning, he launched a lightning-fast jab directly at Seagal's face. The same opening he had used against Norris. What happened next astonished even the martial arts experts present. Seagal didn't appear to move at all yet somehow. Carter's fist passed harmlessly aside, as if diverted by an invisible force. No block, no parry, no evasion that the audience could perceive. Just redirection. Carter blinked in confusion. He had felt something, the slightest touch, guiding his strike off course, but couldn't process what had occurred. He attacked again, a combination this time. Each strike met the same fate. Seagal's movements were so subtle, so economical, that to the untrained eye it appeared as if Carter was simply missing. As if the space around Seagal had become mysteriously impenetrable. This is remarkable. DJ Cruz whispered into his microphone, forgetting his usual bombastic style. Steven Seagal demonstrating the highest level of Aikido movement so efficient it's almost invisible. Carter's frustration mounted with each failed attack. He increased his speed, his power, committing more fully to each strike, and in doing so, made himself more vulnerable to Seagal's subtle manipulations. After 30 seconds of futile attacking, Carter overcommitted to a roundhouse kick. Seagal's response was the first clearly visible technique he had employed, a simple blend with the kick's energy, followed by a slight pressure at precisely the right moment. Carter felt himself airborne, his own momentum amplified and redirected, before landing hard on his back. The impact drove the air from his lungs. He lay there, stunned, staring up at the arena lights. Seagal hadn't followed up. He stood in the same spot, posture unchanged, as if nothing significant had occurred. The crowd's silence broke not with cheers, but with a collective murmur of amazement. They had witnessed something rare. Martial arts, at its most refined, its most essential. Carter pushed himself to his feet, face flushed with humiliation. Lucky throw, he gasped, trying to recover his breath. Try that again. Seagal's expression never changed. He simply waited, centered, and still. Carter attacked with renewed fury, a barrage of strikes thrown with full commitment. Each one was met with the same invisible redirection. As if Seagal existed in a different dimension where physics operated by different rules. After a particularly aggressive combination failed, Carter found himself slightly off balance. Seagal made his move a subtle shift of position, a minimal touch to the champion's extended wrist. And suddenly Carter was moving in a direction he hadn't intended, his own force turned against him. The throw was clean, efficient, almost gentle in its execution. But its effect was devastating. Carter hit the mat with enough impact to silence his protests, his body instinctively curling as he sought to protect himself. Maya captured the moment. Not a contest of strength, but a demonstration of principle. Seagal hasn't attacked once, only redirected Carter's own aggression. The essence of Aikido made visible. Carter lay on the mat longer this time, the fight visibly draining from him. When he finally stood, his trademark smirk had vanished. In its place was something unexpected. Uncertainty. For the first time, Seagal spoke. His voice was quiet, but carried throughout the silent arena. "Young champion," he said, "you fight against yourself. Your greatest opponent is your own ego." The simple truth of those words seemed to penetrate Carter's defenses more effectively than any physical technique. He stood frozen, his carefully constructed identity visibly crumbling. In that moment of vulnerability, something shifted in Seagal's demeanor. Not triumph, not superiority, but recognition. He bowed slightly to Carter, not the perfunctory nod of a victor, but the acknowledgement of one martial artist to another. "We are all students," Seagal said, voice gentle now. "The moment we believe we have nothing to learn is the moment we have lost our path." Carter stood motionless, the full impact of the lesson sinking in. Around him, the arena remained hushed, witnesses not to a humiliation, but to a transformation. Maya's fingers paused above her keyboard. The story had evolved beyond spectacle into something profound. This wasn't about who was stronger or whose techniques were more effective. It was about the eternal cycle of learning, the passing of wisdom from one generation to the next, and the humility required to grow. The exhibition organizer, Hiroshi Tanaka, stepped forward. With a respectful bow to both Seagal and Carter, he reclaimed control of the event. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we have witnessed something extraordinary tonight. Not a contest, but a demonstration of martial arts' highest principles. Let us continue our exhibition with this spirit of respect and learning." As Seagal turned to leave the mat, Carter's voice stopped him. "Wait." The champion's tone had changed completely, the arrogance replaced by something raw and genuine. I don't understand what just happened." Seagal turned back. For the first time, a hint of warmth entered his expression. "That," he said simply, "is the beginning of understanding." The shift in Blaze Carter was palpable. Standing in the center of the mat, his usual swagger replaced by genuine confusion, he looked suddenly younger, more like the boy who had first walked into a gym seeking direction than the champion who had forgotten those humble beginnings. "I want to understand," he said, voice stripped of its usual bravado. "What you just did. It doesn't make sense." "I couldn't touch you." Seagal regarded him silently for a moment, then glanced toward Norris, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. A wordless communication passed between the martial arts legend's recognition of a teachable moment. "Perhaps," Seagal said finally, A demonstration would be more valuable than an explanation. He gestured to Carter to approach him again, but his posture had changed. No longer the impenetrable wall that had redirected Carter's attacks, Seagal now stood in an open, teaching stance. "Attack slowly," he instructed. "Feel what happens." The crowd leaned forward collectively. The exhibition had transformed into an impromptu masterclass, with the world champion as the unlikely student. Maya Lin's fingers hovered above her keyboard. Her article's focus had shifted dramatically from confrontation to transformation, from challenge to lesson. This wasn't the story she had expected to write, but it was infinitely more compelling. Carter approached cautiously, his earlier aggression replaced by tentative curiosity. He extended his arm in a slow, deliberate jab toward Seagal's chest. "Now, observe," Seagal said quietly. Not to Carter, but to the entire arena. As Carter's fist approached, Seagal made a minimal movement, a slight shift of weight, a subtle turn of the hips, hands rising not to block but to connect with the incoming energy. Carter felt his arm being guided off course, his balance compromised, though Seagal had barely seemed to move. "Again," Seagal instructed. "Slightly faster." Carter complied, throwing a more committed punch. The result was the same, but this time Seagal allowed the movement to extend further, demonstrating how Carter's own forward momentum created the conditions for redirection. "This is the essence," Seagal explained, voice carrying throughout the silent arena. "Not opposing force with force, but blending with energy and guiding it to resolution." Carter attempted a different angle, a hook towards Seagal's side. The master intercepted it with the same economy of motion, this time allowing Carter to feel exactly where the redirection occurred, the precise moment when his own commitment became vulnerability. "In your fighting style," Seagal continued, "you seek to impose your will through power. In Aikido, we seek to resolve conflict through harmony." From the sidelines, DJ Cruz provided quiet commentary, his usual bombast replaced by genuine reverence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing something extraordinary." Steven Seagal breaking down the fundamental principles of Aikido with the world champion as his demonstration partner. The exhibition organizer, Hiroshi Tanaka, watched with approval. This unexpected turn had transformed potential disgrace into the purest expression of the exhibition's purpose, bridging traditions, fostering respect. Carter's expression changed with each exchange, frustration giving way to confusion, confusion to curiosity, curiosity to the beginning of understanding. He wasn't being defeated. He was being educated. "The problem," Seagal said, addressing not just Carter, but the entire audience, "is not in your technique. It is in your approach. You fight from ego to prove dominance, to display power. True martial arts begins when you move beyond ego." In the VIP section, Chuck Norris watched with a subtle smile. He recognized what was unfolding. Not humiliation, but initiation. Every martial artist, regardless of accomplishment, eventually faces the moment when technique must yield to principle. Carter attempted a more complex combination jab, followed by cross. Seagal moved with liquid efficiency, each redirection flowing into the next, guiding Carter through his own momentum, until the champion found himself slightly off balance, vulnerable but unhurt. "Feel that point?" Seagal asked, pausing the movement. "That is the decision moment where I could choose to throw, to strike, to control. But the goal isn't to defeat you. It's to resolve the energy you've introduced." For the first time, something clicked in Carter's understanding. He nodded slowly. A student's acknowledgement rather than a champion's concession, Maya captured the moment in her notes, watching arrogance transform into humility in real time. Not through humiliation, but through illumination. Carter isn't being defeated, he's being enlightened. "Now," Seagal said, stepping back. I will demonstrate with Chuck, to show the difference when both practitioners understand these principles. Norris stepped onto the mat with the easy confidence of a man who had nothing to prove. He and Seagal bowed to each other, not the perfunctory nod of competitors, but the deep acknowledgement of fellow travelers on the same path. What followed left the arena breathless. Norris attacked with controlled precision. Seagal responded with flowing redirection. Their movement resembled dance more than combat, a harmonious exchange of energy where neither sought dominance over the other. Each technique flowed into the next with liquid grace, demonstrating not opposition but partnership. Carter watched, transfixed. For perhaps the first time, he was seeing martial arts not as a means of proving superiority, but as an expression of something deeper: control, harmony, respect. After a minute of this mesmerizing demonstration, Seagal and Norris returned to stillness, bowing once more to each other. The arena erupted in spontaneous applause, not the bloodthirsty cheering of a fight crowd, but the appreciative recognition of witnessing mastery. This, Seagal said, turning back to Carter, is what exists beyond technique, beyond winning and losing. It is why we call it an art. Carter stood silent for several seconds, processing what he had witnessed. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed the cocky drawl, replaced by something more genuine. "I've been fighting for 10 years, he said. "Nobody's ever shown me that." "Because you weren't ready to see it," Norris interjected gently. "Sometimes we must reach the limits of our understanding before we can expand beyond them." Seagal nodded agreement. "The question, young champion, is whether you are ready to begin learning now." The moment hung suspended in the arena. Carter at a crossroads, witnessed by thousands. The path of ego, or the path of growth, laid bare before him in the most public way imaginable. Maya held her breath, fingers poised above her keyboard. This wasn't just the climax of tonight's drama. It was potentially the pivot point in a champion's entire approach to his art. Carter looked at the two legends standing before him, then at the crowd surrounding them. His gaze found his team at the edge of the mat, men who had encouraged his brashness, cultivated his arrogance as a marketable asset. Finally, he looked down at his own hands. Hands trained to strike, to hurt, to dominate. "I think," he began, then paused, gathering his thoughts. "I think maybe I've been missing something important." It wasn't full surrender, but it was acknowledgement, the first crack in the edifice of certainty that had defined his public persona. Seagal recognized it for what it was. He bowed slightly to Carter, the gesture of a teacher accepting a student's first tentative step. "That," he said quietly, "is where all wisdom begins." The exhibition organizer stepped forward, sensing the natural conclusion of this unexpected interlude. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will now continue with our scheduled demonstrations. Please join me in thanking our special guests for this extraordinary display of martial arts' highest principles." The crowd rose in standing ovation, not just for the technical display they had witnessed, but for the human transformation that had unfolded before them. Even Carter's most devoted fans applauded, recognizing that they had seen their champion grow rather than diminish. As Seagal and Norris moved to leave the mat, Carter's voice stopped them. "Wait." They turned back, expressions neutral but attentive. Carter stood straighter, visibly shedding some of his defensive posturing. "I owe you both an apology. What I said yesterday, the challenge, the disrespect, I was wrong." The words clearly cost him, but their sincerity was unmistakable. Norris nodded acknowledgement, neither dismissing the apology nor overemphasizing its importance. Seagal studied Carter for a long moment before responding. "An apology accepted in the spirit it is offered," he said finally. "But more important than words is what follows them. Will you continue as before, or will this moment change your path? Carter didn't answer immediately, recognizing the weight of the question. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I know I can't unsee what I've seen tonight. Then that, Seagal said with the hint of a smile, is enough for now. The three men, the aging legends, and the young champion stood together on the mat, a tableau that Maya knew would dominate sports headlines worldwide. Not because of controversy or confrontation, but because they had witnessed that rarest of public moments, genuine transformation. The path, Seagal added, almost as an afterthought, is always available to those willing to walk it. As they left the mat together, not as adversaries, but as fellow martial artists, the exhibition resumed its scheduled programming. But everyone present knew they had witnessed the true highlight of the evening. The moment when arrogance yielded to wisdom, when challenge transformed into respect. In the press section, Maya Lin had stopped typing altogether. Some moments demanded witness rather than documentation. She would find the words later to describe what had unfolded, the unexpected lesson that had transformed not just one fighter's understanding, but an entire arena's perception of what martial arts truly represented. As the legends returned to their seats and Carter rejoined his team, the arena buzzed with conversation. Something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere, a collective recognition that they had witnessed not just physical technique, but the living embodiment of principles that transcended sport: humility, respect, continual growth. Principles that, in the end, defined not just martial arts, but the ongoing struggle to master oneself. The remainder of the exhibition proceeded with renewed energy and focus. Young practitioners from various disciplines demonstrated their forms with heightened intensity, aware that legends were watching. Traditional kata flowed into modern applications, bridging centuries of martial evolution in a celebration of shared heritage. Yet the arena's atmosphere remained transformed by what had occurred between Seagal, Norris, and Carter. Conversations in the stands dwelled on that unexpected interlude rather than the scheduled performances. Phones remained active. Social media flooded with video clips and commentary. The narrative shifting from anticipated confrontation to unexpected enlightenment. Number Respect the Journey had replaced Number Carter vs. Seagal as the top trending hashtag. Maya Lin worked steadily, crafting her article with careful attention to the nuances of what she had witnessed. This wasn't merely a sports story anymore. It was a human narrative about ego, humility, and growth played out on a public stage. Her editor had already messaged twice, sensing the viral potential of this unexpected turn. In the VIP section, Seagal and Norris sat with the same composed stillness that had marked their earlier presence. They watched each demonstration with respectful attention, occasionally exchanging brief observations too quiet for others to hear. Their dynamic was fascinating to those seated nearby, two legends, with different paths, different styles, united by deeper principles that transcended their individual approaches. Carter had returned to his team's section, but his usual post-fight animation was noticeably absent. He sat slightly apart from his entourage, expression thoughtful, occasionally glancing toward the VIP section where Seagal and Norris were seated. His manager leaned in several times, apparently attempting to discuss damage control strategies. But Carter's responses were minimal. Something was processing behind those eyes, a recalibration taking place. As the exhibition neared its conclusion, the organizer approached the VIP section and spoke briefly with Seagal. After a short exchange, Seagal nodded and rose from his seat. The crowd noticed immediately, a ripple of anticipation spreading through the arena. DJ Cruz's voice came through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special addition to our program. Master Steven Seagal has graciously agreed to demonstrate traditional Aikido techniques to conclude our exhibition. The announcement generated enthusiastic applause. After witnessing the earlier unscheduled demonstration, the audience was eager for more direct insight into Seagal's art. Seagal walked to the center of the mat with unhurried confidence. He bowed toward the audience, then toward the area where other martial artists were seated. His presence commanded attention without demanding it, the natural gravity of someone who had spent decades refining not just technique, but presence. For this demonstration, Cruz continued, Master Seagal has requested an assistant. All eyes turned expectantly toward Norris, anticipating another exchange between legends. Instead, Seagal turned toward the section where Carter sat with his team. Blaze Carter, Seagal said, his voice carrying throughout the now silent arena. Would you join me? The invitation hung in the air, not a challenge, but an offering. An opportunity for the champion to step from the role of antagonist into that of student, publicly embracing the lesson that had begun earlier. Carter looked genuinely surprised. He glanced at his team, who seemed equally taken aback, then back to Seagal. The moment stretched, heavy with potential significance. Maya's fingers hovered over her keyboard, sensing the weight of what was unfolding. This wasn't just an invitation to demonstrate techniques. It was an opportunity for public reconciliation, for transformation of narrative. After what seemed an eternity but was merely seconds, Carter stood. Without his earlier swagger, he walked to the edge of the mat and removed his shoes. This simple act of respect, observing traditional dojo protocol, did not go unnoticed by the martial artists present. He stepped onto the mat and approached Seagal, stopping at an appropriate distance. Then, in a move that elicited audible reactions from those who understood its significance, Carter bowed, not the perfunctory nod of a reluctant participant, but the genuine gesture of a student acknowledging a teacher. Seagal returned the bow with equal respect. Today, Seagal addressed the audience. I will demonstrate some fundamental principles of Aikido, not as techniques for fighting, but as expressions of philosophy through movement. He turned to Carter. Attack with commitment, but at half speed. The purpose is demonstration, not competition. Carter nodded, his earlier hostility replaced by focused attention. What followed over the next 15 minutes captivated even those with no martial arts background. Seagal guided Carter through a series of attacks and responses, each demonstrating core Aikido principles. Blending with energy rather than opposing it. Finding the path of least resistance, redirecting force rather than meeting it head-on. With each exchange, Seagal provided calm explanation not just of physical mechanics, but of the underlying philosophy. Notice how I move with his energy. Not against it, or observe how commitment becomes vulnerability when met with emptiness instead of resistance. Most striking to those watching was Carter's evolution throughout the demonstration. His initial stiffness gave way to more fluid movement, his attacks becoming cleaner, his responses to Seagal's techniques more receptive. He was visibly learning, adapting, absorbing, not just going through motions, but beginning to grasp principles. Maya noted in her running commentary, witnessing real-time transformation. Carter moves differently with each repetition, less like a fighter trying to win, more like a student trying to understand. His body language evolves from resistance to receptivity before our eyes. For the final demonstration, Seagal invited Carter to attack with full commitment, not half speed, but genuine intent. The champion hesitated momentarily, then nodded understanding. Carter launched forward with the speed and power that had made him world champion, a lightning-fast combination that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Seagal received it with the same economy of motion he had displayed earlier. But now the audience could better appreciate the principles at work. The subtle blend with incoming force, the almost invisible redirection of momentum, The effortless resolution that left Carter off balance but unhurt. The throw that resulted wasn't theatrical or punishing, it was clean, efficient, almost gentle in its execution. Carter rolled smoothly with the energy, returning to his feet with newfound respect visible in his expression. The arena erupted in applause. Seagal bowed to Carter, who returned the gesture with genuine respect. But instead of concluding the demonstration, Seagal motioned for silence. "There is one more principle I wish to demonstrate," he said when the crowd quieted. "Perhaps the most important one." He turned to Carter. "Attack again. But this time, I will show what happens when we choose not to throw, when we find resolution without dominance." Carter nodded and attacked with another committed combination. This time, Seagal's response was even more minimal. A slight movement that redirected Carter's energy in a circular path, bringing them both back to neutral position, neither dominant nor dominated. The attack resolved without victory or defeat. "This," Seagal explained to the hushed arena, "is the highest expression of martial philosophy, not to defeat an opponent, but to resolve conflict, leaving both integrity and dignity intact." The simplicity and profundity of the demonstration resonated throughout the space. This wasn't fighting as entertainment or sport. This was martial arts as spiritual practice, as path toward harmony rather than dominance. Carter stood silent for several seconds, processing what he had experienced. Then he bowed deeply to Seagal, not as obligation or formality, but as genuine acknowledgement. "Thank you, Sensei," he said, the respectful title slipping out naturally. Seagal returned the bow. "The journey continues," he responded quietly. As they left the mat together, the arena rose in standing ovation. Not for spectacular techniques or dramatic throws, but for witnessing the rarest of martial arts demonstrations, one that revealed the art's soul rather than merely its form. In the press section, Maya Lin had finally found the perfect title for her article: "The Silence That Speaks. When True Masters Move." The exhibition concluded shortly after, but few would remember the scheduled performances that followed Seagal and Carter's demonstration. What remained imprinted in the collective memory was the transformation they had witnessed, not just of a champion's attitude, but of an entire narrative about what martial arts represents in its highest form. As the crowd began to disperse, Maya noticed something unexpected. Carter had approached the VIP section, where Seagal and Norris were gathering their things. The three men spoke briefly, their conversation private despite the public setting. Norris placed a hand on Carter's shoulder, a gesture of acknowledgement between martial artists. Seagal handed Carter what appeared to be a small card, which the champion accepted with visible gratitude. No cameras captured this quiet epilogue. No microphones recorded what was said. But Maya recognized it for what it was: the beginning of a different relationship, a different path, a different understanding. In a world that had expected confrontation, they had found connection instead. And in that moment, she understood the true story she needed to tell. 3 days later, the exhibition was long over. But its impact continued to reverberate through media outlets, social platforms, and training dojos worldwide. Maya Lin's article, published the morning after the event had gone viral, shared millions of times across multiple platforms. Her thoughtful analysis of what had unfolded between Seagal, Norris, and Carter had captured something beyond mere spectacle, touching on universal themes of ego, humility, and the true purpose of martial arts. The headline, "The Silence That Speaks. When True Masters Move," had become a trending phrase, inspiring thousands of discussions about the deeper principles that underlie not just fighting techniques, but approaches to conflict resolution in all aspects of life. In a small, traditional dojo on the outskirts of Las Vegas, far from the neon and noise of the Strip, Steven Seagal moved through morning training routines with the same deliberate focus that had characterized his public demonstration. Dressed in simple black gi, he worked with a handful of senior students, occasionally pausing to adjust a position or clarify a principle. The space was intentionally minimalist, polished wood floors, white walls adorned only with calligraphy expressing key philosophical tenets, natural light filtering through high windows. Nothing resembled the flash and spectacle of the exhibition arena. Here, martial arts existed in its most essential form, stripped of entertainment value, focused entirely on transmission of authentic practice. A knock at the dojo entrance interrupted the morning session. Seagal nodded to his senior student, who moved to open the door. Blaze Carter stood in the doorway, dressed not in his usual flashy attire or fighting gear, but in simple training clothes, black sweatpants, plain t-shirt. He carried a small gym bag and wore an expression of uncharacteristic humility. "Excuse the interruption," he said, bowing slightly at the threshold. "Master Seagal invited me to observe this morning's training." The senior student looked to Seagal, who nodded confirmation. "Enter with respect." The student instructed Carter, who removed his shoes before stepping into the training space. Across town, in the offices of the Las Vegas Tribune, Maya Lin sat across from her editor, discussing the unprecedented response to her article. 3 million shares in 72 hours, the editor said, gesturing to the analytics displayed on his tablet. "You've struck a chord that goes beyond sports or martial arts. People are responding to the human story, the transformation narrative." Maya nodded. "It's not what anyone expected to emerge from that night. I certainly didn't go in thinking I'd be writing about humility and wisdom rather than confrontation." "Carter's team has reached out," the editor continued. "They're requesting an exclusive follow-up interview. Apparently, he's been declining all other media inquiries since the exhibition." Maya raised an eyebrow, surprised. The champion's usual pattern after events was to maximize media exposure, leveraging every opportunity to build his brand. Selective silence represented a significant departure. "Did they mention any conditions or specific focus for the interview?" The editor shook his head. "Only that Carter wants to speak with you specifically because of how you captured what happened." His exact words were, "She saw what was really going on, not just what made good headlines." Maya considered this unexpected development. "I'll do it, but I'd like to suggest something more substantive than a standard interview. If he's genuinely experiencing a perspective shift, let's document that process rather than just getting quotes about it." Back at the dojo, Carter sat in Caesar position at the edge of the training area, observing Seagal's instruction with focused attention. The practice bore little resemblance to his familiar training routines. No music pumping through speakers, no cameras documenting for social media, no entourage offering constant reinforcement. Just focused work, minimal instruction, maximum attention to fundamental principles. After an hour, Seagal dismissed his regular students, who bowed before departing, leaving him alone with Carter. "Thank you for allowing me to observe, Sensei," Carter said, maintaining formal respect. Seagal studied him silently for a moment. "You did not come merely to observe," he noted. "You came seeking something." Carter nodded, choosing his words carefully. "Since that night, I haven't been able to train. Every time I step into my gym, something feels wrong. Empty." He paused. "What?" "You showed me what I felt when we moved together. It's made everything I've been doing seem incomplete." Seagal listened without interruption, his expression neither encouraging nor discouraging, simply present. "I've spent 10 years becoming the best fighter in the world," Carter continued. "But 3 minutes with you showed me I know nothing about being a martial artist." The distinction fighter versus martial artist revealed more about Carter's emerging understanding than any technical question could have. And now? Seagal asked simply. Carter met his gaze directly. I want to learn. Not for the cameras. Not for my brand or my next fight. For myself. He hesitated. I've never asked this of anyone before, but would you consider teaching me? Even just the beginnings? Meanwhile, Chuck Norris sat in a quiet corner of a hotel restaurant, sharing breakfast with exhibition organizer Hiroshi Tanaka. Their conversation had moved beyond the events of 3 days ago to the broader implications for martial arts in contemporary culture. The response has been extraordinary, Tanaka noted. Dojos across the country are reporting increased inquiry calls. People aren't just asking about self-defense or fitness. They're asking about philosophy, about the mental aspects of training. Norris nodded, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. Sometimes it takes a dramatic moment to illuminate what's always been there. Martial arts has never been primarily about fighting. It's about self-mastery, about bringing harmony to chaos. We just forgot to keep telling that story effectively. Carter's challenge may have been the best thing that could have happened, Tanaka observed. It created the perfect contrast, allowed people to see the difference between fighting as spectacle and martial arts as path. The young man has potential, Norris said. Beneath the ego is genuine talent and determination. If he redirects those qualities toward true mastery rather than mere dominance. He left the thought unfinished. Stephen texted this morning, Tanaka said. Carter reached out to him. Asked to observe training. Norris smiled slightly. Not surprised. Once you glimpse the deeper path, it's difficult to remain satisfied with the shallow one. Back at the dojo, Seagal considered Carter's request in silence. The champion waited, displaying uncharacteristic patience. Learning begins with unlearning. Seagal said finally. Are you prepared to set aside what you believe you know? Carter nodded without hesitation. Then we begin with the most fundamental principle, how to receive energy without resistance. Seagal moved to the center of the training area. Stand. Carter rose and took position opposite Seagal, his posture already different from their first encounter, receptive rather than aggressive, questioning rather than presuming. In your fighting, you train to impose your will, Seagal explained. In Aikido, we train to blend with reality as it presents itself. The first requires force. The second requires awareness. He extended his arm slowly. Place your hand on my wrist. Do not push or pull, simply connect. Carter complied, his expression concentrated as he focused on the simple point of contact between them. Now feel what happens, Seagal instructed. He began to move slowly at first, then with increasing complexity. Carter followed, maintaining the connection between them. It wasn't fighting or even practicing techniques. It was learning the fundamental principle of harmonizing with another's energy, the foundation upon which all Aikido is built. As days turned to weeks, Carter maintained a strict discipline that surprised even his closest friends. Each morning he arrived at Seagal's dojo before sunrise, sitting in silent meditation before formal training began. Each evening he studied texts on martial philosophy that Seagal had recommended. His social media accounts, once filled with training highlights and promotional content, went conspicuously quiet. His management team grew increasingly concerned. Sponsorship deals required public engagement. Fight contracts contained publicity clauses. But Carter remained firm in his new direction, much to their dismay. It's not forever, he told his frustrated manager during a tense meeting. It's for as long as necessary. Necessary for what? The manager demanded. You're walking away from millions. From your legacy. From everything we've built. Carter considered this perspective one he would have shared mere weeks ago, and found it strangely hollow. Maybe. he said quietly. We were building the wrong thing. 3 weeks into Carter's unexpected apprenticeship, Maya Lin arrived at Seagal's dojo for the interview that had evolved into something more substantive. With Seagal's permission and Carter's invitation, she had been granted unprecedented access to document this unusual journey. A world champion, effectively starting over as a beginner. What she witnessed over the following days defied conventional narratives about athletic ego and celebrity. Carter arrived each morning without entourage, trained with unwavering focus, accepted correction without defensiveness, and departed without fanfare. Between sessions, he spoke with Maya about his evolving understanding. Fighting gave me identity, he explained during one conversation. When you grow up with nothing, becoming the best at something, anything feels like salvation. But what I'm learning now is that being the best fighter only addresses the external void. It doesn't touch the internal one. Maya's follow-up piece was published 3 weeks later. Not a standard interview, but a documentary-style immersion titled Relearning to Move. A champion's journey from dominance to harmony. It chronicled Carter's initial training sessions with Seagal, capturing not just physical techniques but the philosophical recalibration underlying them. The article included striking images: the world champion, sitting in formal Seiza position, bowing to enter the dojo, practicing basic movements with the focused concentration of a beginner. Most powerful was a side-by-side comparison. Carter's aggressive stance from competition contrasted with his receptive posture in Aikido practice. I spent a decade learning how to impose my will on others, Carter was quoted saying. Now I'm learning how to harmonize instead. It's harder, much harder, but it feels like the beginning of something more meaningful than just winning fights. The piece concluded with a revelation that shocked the fighting world. Carter had withdrawn from his scheduled title defense, announcing an indefinite hiatus from competition to focus on deepening my understanding of martial arts as a lifelong practice rather than merely a competitive sport. The MMA community's reaction was predictably polarized. Some denouncing Carter's decision as weakness, others recognizing it as unprecedented courage for a champion at the peak of his earning potential to step away for philosophical recalibration. But perhaps most telling was the social media post that appeared on Carter's accounts the day Maya's article was published. A simple image. Carter in traditional gi, sitting in meditation posture in Seagal's dojo. The caption read simply, "The loudest teacher I ever had. Never raised his voice. The strongest opponent I ever faced. Never threw a punch. Number, the silent path." The post generated more engagement than any of his previous fight promotions or victory celebrations. Something about the authenticity of this transformation resonated far beyond the fighting community. It touched people who had never watched MMA, who knew nothing of Carter's previous persona, but who recognized the universal human struggle between ego and humility, between external validation and internal peace. Letters and messages poured in from unexpected sources, veterans struggling with anger issues, executives questioning the hollowness of achievement, young athletes facing ethical crossroads in their development. Carter's journey had somehow become a vessel for broader questions about purpose, identity, and authentic strength. 6 months later, a small, private ceremony took place at Seagal's dojo. Carter, along with 3 other students, received his first formal rank advancement, not the rapid progression his natural athleticism might have earned in a commercial setting, but the careful, earned acknowledgement of genuine beginning understanding. As Seagal tied the new belt around Carter's waist, he spoke words meant only for his student. "This is not an achievement, but a responsibility. It marks not progress toward mastery, but recognition of how much there is to learn." Carter bowed deeply, accepting both the rank and the humility it represented. That evening, in a quiet corner of a local restaurant, Carter joined Chuck Norris for dinner, their first meeting since the exhibition that had changed everything. They spoke not as celebrity to celebrity, but as practitioners sharing a path. The hardest part, Carter admitted over their meal, has been letting go of the person I thought I was. The identity I built, the inferno, unstoppable, unbeatable. It became everything. Realizing that wasn't serving me anymore. It's like losing yourself and finding yourself at the same time. Norris nodded, understanding. Everyone faces that crossroads eventually. Some never recognize it, or choose to ignore it. The fact that you're walking through it speaks volumes. Did you go through something similar? Carter asked. Norris smiled. Different circumstances, same lesson. For me, it came after competition achievements, when I realized trophies didn't answer the deeper questions. For others, it comes through loss, through failure, through crisis. But the question is always the same: is what I'm pursuing actually fulfilling, or merely distracting? As they finished their meal, Norris asked about Carter's future plans regarding competition. I don't know yet, Carter answered honestly. Part of me misses it. Part of me sees it differently now. Seagal suggested I'll know when the time is right, either to return or to move in a new direction completely. He's right, Norris agreed. The answer will emerge not from thinking about it, but from your continued practice. When you're centered enough, the path reveals itself. Outside the dojo, the martial arts world continued its evolution. Inspired by what they had witnessed at the exhibition and read in Maya's articles, other fighters began exploring traditional disciplines, seeking to supplement their competitive techniques with deeper understanding. Training facilities that had focused exclusively on fighting efficacy began incorporating philosophical elements, recognizing that martial arts at its most powerful addresses the development of character alongside the development of technique. 1 year to the day after the exhibition that had changed everything, Maya Lin published a reflective piece titled The Echo of Respect: How Silence Transformed a Sport. It examined the ripple effects of that night's unexpected lesson, not just on Carter personally, but on martial arts culture more broadly. The article included updates on all key figures. Seagal continuing his quiet teaching, accepting only students genuinely committed to the full path of martial development. Norris leveraging his platform to emphasize character development through martial arts. Carter gradually emerging as an unlikely ambassador for traditional disciplines within contemporary fighting communities. Most surprising was the announcement that Carter would indeed return to competition, but with a transformed approach. I'm not returning to prove I'm the best, he explained in an exclusive interview. I'm returning to demonstrate that martial philosophy and competitive excellence aren't mutually exclusive, that centeredness, respect, and harmony can coexist with effectiveness. His first fight under this new paradigm became the most watched event in MMA history. Viewers expecting either domination or defeat instead witnessed something entirely different. A champion transformed, fighting with disciplined precision rather than aggressive spectacle, acknowledging his opponent with respect rather than intimidation, celebrating victory with humility rather than swagger. This, DJ Cruz commented during the broadcast, is what evolution looks like. But perhaps most telling was the moment after the fight, captured on cameras but unplanned and unrehearsed. Carter spotted a young fighter watching from ringside, an up-and-coming talent known for his brash style and disrespectful promotion, much like Carter himself had once been. The champion approached him, leaned down, and spoke briefly. No microphones caught the exchange, but those nearby described it later. There's a deeper path than the one you're walking. When you're ready to find it, I'll help you the way others helped me. Maya concluded her reflective piece with an observation that captured the essence of what had unfolded. What began as spectacle ended as revelation. In a world increasingly drawn to noise, flash, and dominance, three men in an arena demonstrated an alternative: the power of stillness, the strength found in humility, the mastery that comes not from defeating others but from constant self-refinement. The true victory that night wasn't determined by who could hit hardest or move fastest. It was measured in moments of transformation, a champion becoming a student, aggression yielding to harmony, disrespect transformed into its opposite. Perhaps that is the ultimate lesson from this unexpected journey. That true martial arts, like true strength, doesn't announce itself with volume or spectacle. It reveals itself in the quiet moments between movements, in the willingness to learn rather than presume, in the humble recognition that mastery is not a destination but an endless path. It speaks most clearly not through what it imposes, but through what it harmonizes with, not through what it defeats, but through what it elevates, not through noise, but through silence. In a small dojo on the outskirts of Las Vegas, far from cameras and commentators, that silence continued its work, one movement, one student, one moment at a time. A former champion and current student, performing basic techniques alongside beginners of all backgrounds. No special treatment, no shortcuts, no concessions to his previous identity. Just the simple, profound truth that had emerged that night in the arena. The path to mastery begins anew each day, with each breath, with each choice to value wisdom over ego, harmony over dominance, respect over spectacle. The echo of respect, resonating still. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.